Hey everybody, it's Patrick Quinney, the sales manager for Level 6. Today we're going to walk you through eXhaust and our waterproof breathable materials, how it works, how it's constructed, how it performs, how to take care of it. We're going to give you all the information you need to make sure that you can give your gear the love it deserves so it can continue to love you back. So let's start with what eXhaust is and how many different variations we have here with Level 6. So eXhaust is our waterproof breathable material. We use it on all of our drywear. We have 3 different variations of it. So to my right we have the eXhaust UL. So the UL stands for ultralight. We have our eXhaust 2.5, which is a 2.5 ply waterproof breathable material. And finally we have eXhaust 3.0, which is our toughest, most durable waterproof breathable material. We use it on all of our dry suits as a result. So let's walk you through what makes eXhaust. How does it function as a waterproof breathable material? So before we can understand how it functions, we need to understand that there's a few layers that work together in a synergy to make up eXhaust. So we start with a durable water repellent finish. Then we have our nylon face fabric. From there we have a Teflon membrane, and then finally we have a inner screen print that protects the material. So let's just look at each piece of that what makes up eXhaust, and let's break it down a little bit for you. So, as I mentioned, the first layer in eXhaust is our is our durable water repellent finish. The durable water repellent finish is very important to this whole aspect of a dry top or a dry suit or any sort of paddling gear and how it performs. So all waterproof breathable material was got its start, the history starts in mountaineering. So we need to understand kind of what the environment is when you're mountaineering. Generally, it's going to be, you're going to be working really hard. So you're climbing a mountain, which means you're going to be sweating and exerting yourself physically. And then we look at the exterior environment around us. Generally, it's going to be cold, windy, so you've kind of got that dry air around you, but you also can run into things like precipitation. So you're going to have snow, sleet, rain. The first time waterproof breathable material in Gore-Tex was used was on a Everest expedition. And they needed something that, again, was going to breathe. So when they're physically exerting themselves and they're getting super sweaty, that the material will actually allow that sweat to wick away and allow them to stay dry. Because if you stay soaked in your own sweat and things get really cold, well, you end up getting colder yourself, your body temperature falls, and you end up with hypothermia. They also needed something to keep the wind off, and as well as protect them from the snow and potentially rain and sleet that they might encounter along the climb. So Gore-Tex was the perfect material for this. Originally developed for medical use, then translated into outdoor gear. Now since then, there's been all sorts of variations, and Level 6 has developed eXhaust. So when we back to the durable water repellent finish, as paddle sports manufacturers, we obviously make gear for paddlers, and we're in a very wet environment. We're either in the water getting splashed with water or it's raining, so we need that durable water repellent finish to protect the second layer, which was the nylon face fabric that I'd mentioned earlier. Without this durable water repellent finish, what ends up happening is your nylon face fabric starts to wet out. When that happens, you still have a line of defense. Water is not getting in, so you're still staying dry. But if that nylon face fabric wets out, then you're no longer breathable. So you're just going to be soaked in your own sweat, and you don't have a breathable garment. So that's why we have the durable water repellent finish. Without that durable water repellent finish beating the water off of the garment, we don't have the breathability aspect to our paddling garment. So as I mentioned, moving forward, the second layer is nylon face fabric. So the differences in between our eXhaust 2.5, our eXhaust UL, and our eXhaust 3 really comes down to the nylon face fabric. They come in different deniers and weaves, and that will determine the how heavy the garment is, how abrasion resistant the garment is, and also will lead to how breathable the garment is. So we'll start with the UL fabric. So this is going to be our lightest weight fabric. It's going to be the most compressible. So that's the nylon face fabric that we're talking about. So it's a 40 by 50 denier face fabric or nylon fabric. And then we move up to the 2.5 fabric. That's going to be a 40 by 90, and then our 3 ply fabric, which I believe is a 70 by 160, being the most durable. So we have our durable water repellent finish, we have our nylon face fabric. Now we have our Teflon membrane. This is what actually provides the waterproof, breathable aspect to the garment. So the Teflon membrane, essentially how it works is got a bunch of little pores on it. Those pores are too small for water molecules to pass through. So boom, dry. That's how it's waterproof. But the little pores on that membrane are also just big enough for vapor to pass through, which is sweat. So it allows you to wick away moisture from your body. And the final step to exhaust, out of the 4 pieces that make up exhaust, is an interior membrane shield. And so it's just an interior screen print that protects that Teflon membrane that I was talking about from the inside. So if you're wearing, you know, an abrasion or like a top that has some sparklies on it, or maybe some rhinestones if you're into that, it's not going to damage the garment from the interior, so it's not going to damage that Teflon membrane. So all 4 of those things, that durable water repellent finish, the nylon face fabric, which is what gives you the difference in weight in all of our exhaust variations, the Teflon membrane, which is what gives you that waterproof aspect to that garment, and the interior membrane shield is what protects it all and wraps it all together and makes it in a beautiful package. That's what exhaust is. So it's those 4 layers working together to make exhaust a waterproof, breathable fabric. So as I mentioned, there's a few different variations that we have. So our exhaust, UL for example, to my right we have the Nahani jacket. It's our canoe jacket, full zip jacket. It's constructed from our our exhaust ultralight. The ultralight material, the claim to fame for it is that it's 40% more compressible than any other waterproof breathable material on the market. So if you're going to be going on a long expedition, and weight as well as packability is a issue for you, you're really going to want to gravitate towards an ultralight fabric. So it features, like I said, a 40 by 50 denier. So that's going to be, as far as when we're comparing the materials to the other, or this version of exhaust to the other versions of exhaust that we have in our line here, it's going to be the least abrasion resistant. But you kind of have to make some trade-offs, right? So you have the most the most breathable garment as well as the lightest weight material. So you're going to have to sacrifice the abrasion resistance. From there we have our 2.5 ply. Now we start to phase this in on more of our whitewater products and some of our touring products and our more kind of heavy use paddle sports products. So the Duke over here to my left is a prime example of the 2.5 ply material. We construct this whole dry top using our exhaust 2.5 ply. So this one is going to be slightly more tear resistant because it has a higher denier at 40 by 90 in comparison to the ultralight fabric. So again, you're going to have a little bit more resistance, abrasion resistance, about the same breathability. However, it's not going to be as lightweight as the ultralight fabric. And finally, we have the 3 ply material. So as I mentioned, we use this on all of our dry suits. It's going to be the heaviest material. However, you're also going to have the most durability. So again, dry suits tend to see a lot of abuse. So that's why we use that exhaust 3.0. So it's got a 70 by 160 denier. And that higher denier makes it a little less breathable when compared to the ultralight and 2.5 ply fabric. However, it does make it a lot more abrasion resistant. So when we look at our materials here, exhaust, and we know how it's constructed, we now need to take care of it. It functions great on the water when you first get it. That's awesome, but it does require some maintenance to make sure it continues to perform for you when using it heavily. So first thing you're going to want to do when you get off the water, especially if you're going to be paddling silty water or if you're going to be paddling in salt water, you're going to want to make sure you rinse your gear. It's very important you rinse your gear with fresh water after every use. It's simple, just take a hose to it, or if you don't have a hose, if you can just fill a basin full of fresh water and just dunk it in there, clean off all the salt and silt and just general grit that you get when you go paddling, especially in other some of the rivers that tend to flood. You end up with a lot of dirt and grime in there, and that can get really clogged into your Teflon membrane and damage those pores. So you want to make sure you're rinsing your gear. From there, you want to make sure you're adequately drying your gear after every use. So what can happen with the seam tape on the interior of your suit, which is what actually prevents water from coming in through the seams. So you want to make sure that you dry it adequately, because what can happen is you end up with mold. So let's say you take your gear or you take your dry top off after paddling, you toss it in the back of the car and you forget about it for a couple of days. You end up getting all sorts of mold and spores growing on the interior of the garment. One that affects the performance of your Teflon membrane. It clogs things up, so you would end up with a garment that doesn't breathe properly, and it can even grow in the pores and actually stretch the pores out, and what you end up with is a leaky garment. But also that seam tape, it will begin to lift. That glue the mold and the spores will start to eat away at the glue that holds that seam tape in place. And when that happens, you basically need to either re-glue your seam tape using a hot iron, or replace the seam tape altogether. It's a big job. And once you get mold in your suit, it's really tough to get out, and it will just kind of continue to grow. So it's really important to rinse your gear. Really important to dry your gear. Now, when we talk about drying your gear, I don't mean just leave it baking in the sun. You want to, if possible, hang your gear on a hanger inside, out of any harmful UV rays. UV rays are pretty terrible for your gear, so you want to make sure you're hiding it from the UV rays. Now, if you're on an expedition, what I would suggest, if you've got some shaded areas, is to set up a clothesline and hang the suit in a shaded area. Don't leave it out for like hours on end, or if you're going to be taking a layover day, dry it for a couple of hours and then put the gear back in your backpack out of the sun, or your gear bag. Just make sure it's out of the sun and that it's not baking there, because you can really end up damaging the suit that way. I always recommend drying your gear right side out. You don't want to turn it inside out, because you're just exposing the interior and that Teflon membrane to more abrasion, right? We have that nylon face fabric. That's going to be the toughest part of the whole top of the whole garment. So you want to make sure that you're hanging that out first, right? That's your first line of defense. So rinsing and drying is really the thing that you're going to be doing most often. So every time you go for a paddle, you want to make sure you're rinsing your gear and then adequately drying it. Give it time to dry. Make sure you don't just leave it in the back of a car or in a smelly gear bag. That's how you end up with mold. It's not good. If you do that, your gear will last a really long time. From there, you want to do your annual inspections. And sometimes you do it at the start of the year, and you should probably do it midway through the year, just to make sure there's not going to be any problems that are developing. And what I always recommend is inspecting your gear before you put it away for the season and forget about it, so that it's not a problem in the spring when you actually want to go paddling, but your gear is not ready to allow you to go paddling. So do an inspection. Turn your gear inside out. You want to be looking at all the seam tape. Remember when I talked about how you can end up with mold on the inside of your seam tape? The seam tape starts to lift. You want to make sure you're going through that seam tape and being thorough, looking for any spots that are lifting, and treating those right away. we can do some repairs for you in-house here. A lot of it's really easily done. It's just a lot of the glue on the seam tape is just heat activated. You run an iron over it. As long as you keep that iron moving, you're not going to burn the garment. And it'll just glue it right back down. If for really problematic areas, you can use Aquaseal, but you want to make sure you're inspecting your gear. Inspect gaskets, inspect your seam tape, and make sure you're looking for any delamination points. Before they become big problems, you want to be able to address that with either the manufacturer right away, if you find a manufacturer's defect, or you want to make sure that you're dealing with the basic maintenance right away before it becomes a big problem. The next thing is cleaning your gear. I recommend doing this at the end of the year or after any particular really nasty water. So if you're going to do an expedition on the Grand Canyon, for example, sometimes you end up with flash floods. The water turns milky brown, and that means there's a lot of silt and sediment in the water, and that settles into the pores of your dry wear here. So if you're going to be paddling really dirty sedimented water with lots of silt in it, you want to clean it after using it in those style, or after paddling in that type of water. But you at the very least want to clean it once a year. Now, I recommend the Wetsuit Drysuit shampoo from GearAid. You can pick this up at most local gear stores or direct through Level 6. It's really easy to use. You basically take this cap off, you pour a little bit of the shampoo into the cap, pour that into a water basin, and from there you just put your dry top or your dry suit in there. Make sure to slosh around, give it a good soaking. If there's any stains or dirt, you can take a cloth and start scrubbing to try and get that stain or dirt out. But you definitely don't want to be using any other detergent than this. This is designed specifically for waterproof breathable materials and gaskets and wetsuits and dry suits. We want to make sure we're using a proper detergent for that. So you're going to give it a good sloshing, make sure you get all that mold and all that bacteria out of the suit. From there, you're going to give it a rinse, and you're going to make sure you're thoroughly drying it. A very important step is to just really thoroughly dry your gear after each use. The last step after cleaning would be to reproof your dry suit or your garment with a durable water repellent. So remember when we talked about the durable water repellent finish on all of our waterproof breathable garments and how important that is? You can retreat your garment once, even twice a year if you're noticing that your dry top or your dry suit is no longer beating water. That's when you should retreat it with this durable water repellent finish. So this particular one is a spray-on. I like the spray-on version best. So you're basically just going to take this, you're going to aerosol spray it all over the top here. Make sure to get underneath the arms and all the nooks and crannies, and then you're just going to hang dry it as such. For some jackets, you're able to put them in the dryer. My recommendation and Level 6's recommendation is you never put your dry top, dry suit, your gear, don't put expensive gear in the dryer on high heat, or just leave it out of the dryer. Hang dry it, it's the best option. So you get that durable water repellent spray, spray it all over your garment, and then just hang dry it. From there, your gear is good to go. The last thing I'll say when it comes to maintenance and care of your gear is to make sure you're storing it properly. So if possible, always hang your gear. I tend to hang mine in my basement, in a nice cool place that's nice and dry. If that's not a possibility, you can put it in a Rubbermaid or a plastic bin, just loosely folded. You don't want to make it super tight folds, especially when you're incorporating zippers in there. You can kind of damage your zipper if you leave it folded tightly for too long. So just loose pack in a Rubbermaid or like a plastic bin, and you can leave it out, or in your basement or in the garage, just anywhere where it's not going to be subjected to the elements, and it's going to be relatively climate controlled. So that's basically how to take care of your gear. So again, just to recap, we're going to rinse after every use. We're going to rinse our gear. Then we're going to dry it adequately. Couple hours at the very least. I would even recommend trying to go overnight with drying your gear in between uses. From there, we're going to inspect our gear. We're going to be looking for any issues that come up. We're going to address them right away, because if you kind of ignore them and keep paddling, they just become worse, and the gear just doesn't perform the way it's supposed to and becomes a more complex repair the longer you let it go. Lastly, we're going to clean our gear. Remember, we use our Wetsuit, Drysuit shampoo. We wash it by hand. We don't put it in a machine. Just put it in a wash basin, either a bathtub or a Rubbermaid bin. Put it in there. Give it a good sloshing. Any stains, you're going to scrub that out with a rag. Then you're going to let it dry. After it dries, you're going to want to retreat it with your durable water repellent finish. Again, the spray-on version, and you're not going to put it in the dryer after you've done the spray-on. And finally, you're just going to store your gear either on a hanger, but in a climate-controlled area, away from any direct sunlight. That's the best way to take care of your gear. So that's eXhaust in a nutshell. We use all types of it. We blend certain fabrics together. We have a wide range of paddling gear made for canoeists, sea kayakers, whitewater paddlers, kayak anglers. There's no limit to how our gear can be used. Just make sure that you're doing the research, looking for the right gear for your usage, and that you're taking good care of it. So just pay attention to your gear. Make sure to give it the love so it can continue to love you right back. But that's eXhaust. That's Level 6's proprietary waterproof breathable material. That's how it works. That's how to take care of it. We hope this information was super helpful and important to you. And if you have any questions, you can always email us. You can always call us. You can send us DMs through either Facebook or Instagram. I think we're even on TikTok now. So yeah, please feel free to reach out to us with any questions. We're always happy to give advice on how to take care of your gear. And yeah, see you on the water. Hope this was helpful. Thanks guys for tuning in. Really appreciate it.